Today we have a very special guest who's been working for the past 28 years in a very interesting field of emergency management. He is the kind of person who makes sure that you and I are safe in emergencies. And I consider him a behind the scene hero because he actually makes sure that we are all alive in situations like the fires right now in Australia. He has recently started a podcast and an online business, which is extremely interesting transition because he comes from a field of emergency management and he actually made it an online business, and he's going to share with us a little bit more about it. So how do you actually get people to listen to you who are not really in social media or in internet at all to listen to you and actually create an online business? But anyways, I'm gonna let him tell you more about it. Without further ado, here's Steve Newton. Hi Steve, how are you today?
Catalina, I am just living the retirement dream, thank you.
That's
which
amazing.
Translates into I'm now a consultant.
Okay.
And I'm busier than I've ever been.
Oh, that is actually amazing to hear. And thank you so much for not stopping because, like I said, people like you is what keep us all as a society safe. But so why don't you tell me more about what you do and how do you help an avatar online, which is a bit hard to reach because they're not really in social media. So how do you do that?
Well, I can tell you my transition from long-term government employee into the world of entrepreneurship has not been without a whole bunch of head scratching and a couple of these moments, right? It's an interesting process to try and take an environment where creativity and innovation and things like that, they're encouraged, but they're not fully supported. And versus the entrepreneurial world where you absolutely need to have some of that to survive, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I come out of a world, emergency management. So I did wildfire and I did floods and debris flows and you name it, all hazards kind of stuff for a long time on the operations side. So boots on the ground kind of stuff, incident command kind of stuff, and all that. So that's not really something that you can market quite readily as you could sort of health, wealth, or love, like common internet online marketing domains and niches now. So I had to figure out how to take my skill sets that I had there off into this consulting world for starters. And that part of it was pretty easy, right? Okay. You know, if you have a bit of a name for yourself like I did, then people know you and it's not too hard to find work.
Yes.
But the kind of work is hourly basis or project basis. And I'll be quite frank with you, there's more than I can handle. Great
Okay.
to have, right?
Yes.
I need to approach this stuff a little bit differently or I'm just going to burn out because I'm retired. I'm not supposed to be tired. So I had to get a little bit smart about this stuff. So I recognized a number of years ago the power in the online marketing world. You know, and it all started with a bunch of these silly little advertisements. And then, of course, I became one of those people that followed every shiny object that looked pretty cool.
Yes.
But I do not ever consider that to have been a waste of money.
Okay.
Every time I bought somebody's course for $197 or $2,997, I learned something.
Okay.
And that was kind of part of my plan. So when I retired about 2 years ago, I knew that online marketing would have a big play. So I was starting to put some of the foundational pieces.
Is there anything that you would have done different? Like if you were to start now with all the money that you invested, because there's a lot of people out there that are trying to buy, courses and courses and courses. Would you have done anything different?
So I would say, given the time frame that I started this all in, probably not, because it was kind of the early days, the wild, wild west sort of thing. But if I were to start over right now, absolutely, I'd be cutting to the chase and I'd be finding out who the experts in the fields are. And I'd be following them directly instead of figuring out who's doing all the name dropping and all the joint venture kind of connections and me trying to make sense of all that, right? I'd be looking for people like you to kind of steer me and get me past that. And there really is a lot of people now that offer a bunch of great services for small
business.
Yeah.
Oh, and so you started a podcast. Why did you do that? So why did in this process, why did you think it made sense to do that?
Well, lucky me, my ideal avatar is the classic government or organizational employee with no discretionary income or budget to spend. So I had to figure out how to monetize what I think has got a pretty good opportunity to be a very, very sub-niche kind of an opportunity. But it's not easy because anybody who's been in a government environment just knows that financial, capital, budget management stuff is a challenge at the best of times, right? So here's little me trying to figure out how to eke out some dollars from all these people. So I had to figure out first how to get a group together or start building a list, if you were. And because primarily my clients, my ideal clients would be in the business to business category, I went to LinkedIn.
Okay.
And that part of it's been fairly easy for me. There's a lot of people, that are following me. I post stuff and those sorts of things. But I did that with a bit of a strategy in mind because I had to figure out how to take this group of a gazillion people on LinkedIn that might or might not be related to my business, but sort of are a little bit. And I had to figure out how to find those people that are going to be what I would consider be a warm market, right?
Okay.
So, I've done the Facebook advertising, I've done the YouTube channel stuff. I've got a bit of a blog on my website and I, everything that everybody, all the experts tell you to do. I've tried all of that stuff, right? And what I realized here, probably last summer sometime, is that what I needed to do is I needed to make this a little bit more of a value added thing and not just publish stuff like everybody else.
Okay.
Now, within my consulting world, I've got my normal daily business, but I've also got a bit of a passion. So once I'd flagged that passion piece of it, it became pretty easy for me to figure out where I was going to take this. So my passion happens to be around emerging technologies.
Okay.
I've always been involved in that in my sort of career in the past.
Yes.
I was always sort of dabbling in some of the leading edge stuff around international projects to develop stuff. So once I realized that interest plus the skill sets might leverage into something, I started the podcast. And the podcast is called the Smart EOC Podcast. And EOC meaning Emergency Operations Center. So my big interest around that is looking at all the emerging technologies that are coming. The value piece that I hope I'm providing is helping people wade through that huge myriad of subject matter experts and products and software tools and services out there to try to get through to the best practices or to kind of learn a little bit more about what the future needs to look like so they can start their strategic planning, that kind of stuff. So once I'd figured out my passion piece and whatever, the podcast was fairly easy to figure out.
So I guess, because that's actually very interesting that you're mentioning that. It's a lot of things, a lot of people saying things, do this, do that, do that. So the advice that you will give people that are trying to figure out how to do marketing or how to promote their businesses would you say is like you say, like looking for something you're passionate about, something that you're good at, and then just try to merge it with your current kind of like the topic or what you know. Is that what you will say? I
think so, because the passion piece, well, that's what makes me want to get up and do this stuff every day, right? It's a big internal motivation piece for me. And if you listen to all the subject matter experts, they say the same thing, find your passion and then figure out all the rest of it after that. So that I kind of took that to heart, even though I sort of knew a little bit beforehand. It just kind of fell into place for me.
And then you were saying that there was some podcasts that you found podcasts before, and then you find a common kind of thing with a podcast. So how do you do that? How do you start a podcast? How do you start this whole process?
So what I did was I went out and I researched, and I went to Google, of course, because that's where you go. I researched all the podcasts that I could find in the emergency management domain. And there's lots of them. There's specific podcasts for first responders, police, fire, ambulance type. There's podcasts for domestic, public security, public safety. There's stuff around personal preparedness. There's stuff around earthquake preparedness. So when I looked at all of these, what I discovered was pretty much everybody had a big mix of topics that they were talking about. They weren't sub-niched down.
Okay.
So I could have done the same thing, and I could have been just another podcast going out there asking the former administrator from FEMA for another podcast interview and stuff like that. But what I did was, when I linked it back to my my passion around emerging technologies and what have you, it made it pretty easy for me to sort of design what I wanted my podcast to be themed around, and then go find the clients. So
Interesting.
as it turns out, there's a number of folks in the emergency management world, and that can be people in the responder practitioner area, people like myself, basically. It can be people in the non-government organization domain, like the Red Cross and Samaritan's Purse and all those sort of disaster relief type agencies. There's a bunch of thought leaders and strategic foresight practitioners and influencers, really. And then there's also a whole bunch of people that have got great sort of software tools and business practice. So I decided I was going to kind of start mixing all those together under this one sort of sub niche. And it's made it very easy for me to approach some pretty powerful people and get interviews out of them.
Oh, that's amazing. So, okay, so a piece of advice then, I'm just recapping, is like, if you are in a need in a field and you want to actually kind of go and do research, but try to niche it down, and that actually is going to help you also build in your business and your leads. Like, actually, that's how you actually start generating leads through. So to, like you said, an audience that is not really online, but they do listen to podcasts and they like that kind of like new style of content. Is that?
Well, you bet. And as fate would have it, Google is now indexing podcasts much higher, and the speaker's notes now are becoming search engine optimizable.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that. That's a good. Thank you.
Yeah. And there's, if you would ask me about mistakes that I have made in the past,
yes,
it comes from my hard wiring around always just being a doer. So
okay.
I've always had to do the stuff, and I've been the guy, and I have to be in charge.
Yes.
I have to know everything that's going on. Well, guess what? There's only 24 hours in a day.
Yes.
So it took me quite a while, but just this last, I would say, 6 months, just taking baby steps towards outsourcing some things.
Okay.
So,
and what kind of things have you outsourced, for example, for your business?
There's super simple things like get yourself a bookkeeper and accountant, or even some of the marketing stuff. Like, there's people that are way better at Facebook marketing than I am, although I understand it reasonably well.
Yes.
But all that means for me is that I can talk to them in their language now, which is a good win for me.
Yes.
But I've looked to productivity tools. So I now have a team of subcontractors, if you will, that I can draw on, pull together on a project by project basis. So we use things like Slack. That's super simple, right? I mean, you and I are talking on Zoom right now. We use that all the time with our clients. And we, of course, we use the free version because we're a small business. But there's tools out there that you can use to transcribe audio. So there's a tool that I use called Designer, with 2 R's at the end of it, .io. And it would take this audio recording that you and I are making right now, and within about 25 minutes, you would get back a transcript.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's a paid subscription service, and it costs less for a month of that than it does for the many hours that it would take me to go through and meticulously correct and edit every out of the script and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's just a ton of those out there, and people like yourselves and other people in the online marketing world, they know about these things. They may not know about some of them, but collectively, we all know in this industry about these things. So if I were to offer some advice, I would say start looking at a bunch of the automation, productivity kind of stuff.
Okay.
I would say outsource a bunch. So this year for me very much has been interesting because one of my team members, and I chose her specifically because she's a great balance. I'm extroverted and I'm a strong systems thinker, so I'm chasing every shiny object. Okay? I'm going with this every day. It's just like so many people listening to your podcast. So Leah, on the other hand, she's very methodical thinker. So everything has to be organized and structured. So she actually held me accountable this year, and a small group of us got together and we came up with a strategic plan for next year.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it's not a complicated process. It took us a couple hours one morning, and then I bought Chinese food. It was great, right? And all we did was we just looked at everything we've been doing all year. We looked at some of the resources and assets we had. So All of you always hear about this notion of repurposing your content, right? So
Yes.
you write a blog post and then you turn it into a YouTube video to get the link love, or this recording here, you'll put the speaker's notes out and then you turn it into a blog post. You repurpose
Yes.
everything. Great. Well, I looked at some of my products that I delivered to clients and recognized that there's this little suite of tools that we have built for a couple of clients that could very easily be repurposed into an opportunity. And we identified a minimum of 10 clients that we need next year to make it a very, very lucrative year by repurposing this stuff. So we've taken our sub niche, really, if you look at it that way, and we sub niched down even further into this one little area.
Okay,
Now,
that's very interesting.
well, it is. So we've done that because we know that's where the money's going to come from, and it's an easy one for us to do.
Okay.
It's not the emerging technology thing that I love.
Yes.
Okay. However, it does look like that some of the work that we've done, we will able to bring into the augmented reality world. So I've got another conversation going with an old university friend of mine. And as we speak right now, he and I are looking at building an augmented reality tool in emergency management. So we're going to repurpose all of that work as well. Even though it's still making us money now, it's got a big, huge potential upside here in the next year or two. And
I guess what you were saying, that's when it's important to have a team that complements you. Like you were saying, like it wouldn't happen if you had as strategic, those people that were actually sat down and be like, okay, where is the money? Let's niche down all the stuff. And then they have you as a leader, but you need good people around you. It's kind of like what you were saying. And it's don't do it alone.
Well, and so there's another element to that too, and that's that whole sort of, that self-imposed barrier towards moving ahead around the financial piece, right? So it's very easy for me to work 60 hours a week and bill a reasonably good hourly, like a very good hourly rate for that. And I would do well.
Yeah.
But I would be working and I would be on the go constantly and I wouldn't have as much flexibility as I would want, right?
Yes.
So what I've done now, and part of it has been through this strategic rethink, but also I'm just realizing that, you know what? I think I want to start taking Fridays off.
Yes.
So I've stepped back. I've brought some people in. I'm outsourcing this stuff. And I'm now becoming a bit more of a cat herder than I am an actual doer. It's a tough transition for me personally.
Yes. And I'm like that too. That's why I thought this is super interesting to hear, because I know a lot of people when they start businesses and consultants and anything, that we want to do everything. And it's like, I need to do everything because I need to control everything. But then you're driving yourself crazy, working too much. And then sometimes it's just, So no, that's, I completely agree with you. Thank you.
So, I mean, if I could label that as something, I think I would call that the new entrepreneur's curse or something like that, right?
I like that.
Because I think everybody's got that to some degree,
Yes.
unless they just happen to fall into an incredible multi-million-dollar opportunity after one product launch or something like that.
Yes, but no, very rare.
Well, they are.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I was going to say, why don't you share with us the link to your podcast? And I'm going to be including these links as well on the description of the video for people who want to access it. But where can I actually find your podcast? Sure. It will be, of course, www.thesmarteocpodcast.com. Well, thank you so much. But you guys got it there. It's pretty interesting, and I'm definitely check it out, because it's nice to, if you're in emergency management, it's interesting. But if not, it's go and kind of see what you've done and how you do it, because I know podcast is actually a pretty big thing now coming up. It's not coming up; it's been around for a while. Yep. But it's something to consider. Well, if you look at all the tier one online marketing gurus right now, they're all starting to get into podcasts. Mm-hmm. So it's a thing. And I think it's part of providing value to your community, if you will. But it's also another way to drive organic traffic to wherever you need to drive to. Yeah, true. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for having us, for being here today, and wish you all the best. And thank you very much, everybody, for watching. And remember to subscribe if you're new to my channel, and give a thumbs up to this video if you like it. And I'll see you next Wednesday. Have a great day.